because we will move on to our forum discussion right now. And as we agreed already at the beginning of this event, that we would first take back the questions that Anne Jo raised. And I kind of rephrased them. So sorry, Anne Jo, they're a little different, but they have the same meaning. So first we would talk about how to deal with the current garden cities, right? And how to renew them and maybe add volume or not. And then we will move on to how we build new ones, right? And then we will first focus on how to make the neighborhood and also how to organize it. You raised already like ASML, and for instance, Amazon does it also in America. How to are they the parties, or has it to be organized by the people? That question will come then. And finally, we'll also talk about affordability, of course. So let's start. Sorry. Let's start with the first question. Oh yeah, and there are also, of course, there's room for questions from the audience. But let's first ask Anne Jo to reflect. So did you get answers to your questions?
Now, in your presentation, it was a really good example of how we can densify the city and still make it green again. So that question was a nice answer, I think, yeah. The Wonderwoods is a really nice building, but it's not affordable housing.
Yeah, mid-segment.
Yeah, mid-segment. So it was not everything included, but that's a really nice answer. I think it's the difficult part is that in New West there already live people. So Wonderwoods is on a place where there was a square. Yeah. And in New West and also in the north of Amsterdam, there are already people living. And it was what you were telling, that is the minority nowadays, because new people come in, they have a higher income, and some people with a lower income do think, okay, what am I going to do in this community? So that kind of question, we didn't get a good answer yet.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's explore that then. So then let's go one by one. So we first start then by how to proceed with the existing garden cities. I would like to ask Hilde, because you are also the chairing Van Eesteren Foundation, and Van Eesteren is also the foundation is also working, let's say, on preservation of or let's say cherishing the heritage. How would you see, for instance, if we would build new buildings in New West, in the garden, one of the garden cities in Amsterdam? How do you reflect on that, seen from the heritage point of view?
Well, first of all, I think you have to cherish or discover what's the quality of the heritage. This is the basis. So the most easiest thing to do is get rid of everything and start all over again, and you can make the buildings Charlotte is expressing wonderful. But that's a blind spot. But so the most important part is get really into the quality like the architecture, the urban design. This is more the hardware. But also the quality of the software. And that's what I try to give attention to, for like who's living there, show some empathy, what is their need. If I look at the audience today, we're all the same sort of people. If I look to the audience working in local government, I'm advising, for instance, Den Haag for the new city architect, and I say, if you really work for a local government, you have to work for all the people of your city. Also the people you're not very enthusiastic about, or you won't meet on your birthday party. So I think we have to look more, not only make your own plan and your own design and what you think, then you have to go work for an advisory and a commercial office. But if you really work for a local government or a regional or national government, you have to do it for everybody. Because nowadays a lot of people don't feel heard by the people who are planning the cities. They think they're planning it for the rich people, for the new people, not for me. So I think if we really want to work on cities, so beware of what's the good thing for the heritage, but also add something that really addresses what all the people in the city are longing for, because everyone wants to live in a healthy, livable, nice area. So that's what I...
All right, involve the local communities, actually, right? That's in short. Anna raised the question, Anio, raised the question about heritage, and she also said something like, yeah, some people that live in those buildings, which are listed, they say like, yeah, what is in it for me? What can, I mean, I would like to have another type of building or neighborhood to live in. How would you reflect on that? I'm sorry to make it more difficult for you, but I'm just curious.
I thought you were addressing it to one of the others.
We'll move on in a minute, but I'm just curious about what your thoughts are about that. So there's always a conflict between the people that live there that maybe don't feel like how important the building is that has been listed.
Yeah.
And
but that's also, I don't want to take the floor of the whole discussion, but that's also an issue, because a lot of people, they're not worried about the building, or they're worried if there's enough bread on the table this morning, can I have enough clothes for my children? They have a lot of different issues. So therefore, I think something where we have to cherish is that we have a government, that we have a social, at least a social, oriented society in the Netherlands. So you really need to do something. We are looking after you. We are doing something for you. And then you can, of course, you want to give them also their own, their own involvement, what's in for them. But you have to do something to make a basis, and then you have to see what every people can adjust and to be it more for themselves. But nowadays, I think that's a little bit lost. Government is more the facilitator. It was very hip in the Netherlands. The market, the private parties, they have to do it, and the government is more the facilitator. I'm every place where I'm standing, I say, no, the government has to be proactive. You have to take your own responsibility, because nowadays we're going in a way like England, where you're talking about. So we don't want to get in that kind of situations. We want to cherish what we have built on. So I think that's very important.
Well, let's move straight to Katie, whether she agrees.
Sorry, one thing. I think if we densify our neighborhoods, we have to make that advantage for the people who already live there. So that means that we create meeting places, that we create places to have sport, that we also insulate houses so that they get a more comfortable house. So if we only make those new buildings and not think about the people who are already living there and making their places great again, yeah, then it won't be a success. So I hope this will be a good example, and that we will do it more. That not only create new places, but also make it more nice for the people already living there.
Yeah. Well, very short then. And then we move to Katie.
Sorry about it. But because I was a city architect of Leiden, and there was an audience, and it was about high-rise building, beautiful building, the architects, and the half of the audience was getting away. I say, hey, what are you doing? Yeah, it's not for us. And say, okay, are you against high-rise building, or what is it? And then I say, if there is a community house in the bottom of the building, oh yeah, then something different. If your parents can live there, so your house is going to give to another family. Oh yeah, then it's more for us. So at the end, nobody was against the high-rise because it started by, no, 30 meters, 50 meters, 70 meters, we don't want it here. Now at the end, nobody was against high-rise building, but it's because something is taken away, because the green spot is where I lease my dog, and now it's a high-rise building. So if we are more aware about that system, maybe we can densify the city on a very good way.
Okay, I see. I feel that there's some agreement being made here, which is nice. Let's move to Katie. I'm curious about the international perspective. So we just referred to the UK as something that we should not go. I'm curious about how you reflect on that.
I would agree. Just reflecting on the conversation that we've just had, just on densifying the garden cities and the new towns, there's been a really interesting debate in England about that, and the fact that people that moved to particularly the post-war new towns, but also the garden cities, they were sold a vision of a utopia, or they were sold a vision of a new way of life. And for those early residents of some of the new towns, they feel like the densification of their new towns is compromising the vision that they had of this place they were going to live with lots of green space. But it all comes back to the points you made. It's about, there's just such a lack of trust in the planning process in England. There's such a disconnect between what is happening to people and the way people are involved. And if you actually have an honest, transparent conversation with people about how decisions are made and why decisions are made and what people actually want from the process, it completely transforms the conversation. And one of the things I've been working a lot on in the last couple of years is around the aspect of the garden city model in terms of what we call long-term stewardship means, and the role of the stewardship and management of place in involving people in the way places are designed and created. And that comes from a practical perspective in that green space or green infrastructure used to be adopted by the council or municipality and looked after, but they don't want to do that anymore because it's too expensive. They would have a heart attack at thinking about how they would look after the trees on these amazing buildings. And so what's happening is developers are setting up their own management companies, charging residents a fortune in service charges on top of the other charges they have to, and for really poor quality management. But actually looking at the garden city model, where you look holistically about how the land and those assets are owned and managed, and if you have an organisation which can really embed the needs of local people, understanding what community facilities people want. In England, all these fantastic examples we've seen about how people live together in these communal spaces. That's such a culture change in England. People aren't used to sharing their space. They pull up the drawbridge and they want their own space. And this aspect of communal living is we are really promoting it because it's the way forward, even though you've been doing it for decades. But this can all be incorporated into aspects of long-term stewardship, and really importantly, how you can actually pay for it from the outset, how you can pay for these shared community facilities and the management of green infrastructure. So it's about communication and trust and hearing the quiet voices which don't often get heard.
Thanks for this remark about the stewardship. This is indeed something that is interesting to explore. So Charlotte presented a fantastic project, and Charlotte, I'm curious about how will it remain? How do you expect it to look in 10 years?
Greener. No, so the thing is with Wonderwoods, the whole in actually both projects. The fee of the green is already in the investment of the investor. So these are both investment projects, mainly focused on mid-segment housing. In the case of the Pulse, there's a big and large office space which pays for everything for the houses, which is quite great. So again, in that sense, there's a lot of balance because that housing on that location unaffordable for anybody. So how you want to make it affordable? Put something next to it which makes a lot of money, and then balance it out. So it's one investor who bought it, and the whole project in that sense is balanced. And in Wonderwoods, all the costs, what they say, now I have to say it correctly, to make the green stay as green for the coming years, it costs one, as we would say in Dutch, bosje bloemen, but one bunch of flowers you buy in a market a month to get the whole system going and to keep everything going per apartment. Yes.
One bunch of flowers per month per apartment.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. That's. Okay.
And then, don't know by heart, but yeah, a lot. So that's because it's so green, and that also takes care of the communal spaces in that sense. So also the part for the city. And that is paid partially in service charge, and half of it is paid by the investor because he finds like it's a concept, we're selling the concept, and that's been guaranteed for at least 45 years. So that's all been covered. Yeah, and the same for the educational center, which is all also for 15 years. It is reserved as educational center and community center for the neighborhood around, because also there we had a lot of talks with all the people who live around, because next door to Wonderwood, which is, you see these pictures of this nice high-rise tower, but one street adjacent, there's this really tiny single housing units.
Amstelveen,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's also, no, I meant in Utrecht.
Yeah.
No,
Minute.
yeah. So in that sense, I fully agree that it is also with those big new projects, it's the challenge is in getting it embedded in the community, or else it won't work.
Yeah. So this is the investor type of project,
Yeah.
and this is indeed a nice trick to kind of combine it with
Yeah.
office space and then
Yeah.
sum it up and get a kind of decent or let's say feasible business case.
Yeah.
There are of course other ways of organizing it. I mean, there's the old, let's say, the old-fashioned social housing system with housing associations who organize it in a way. And there's, of course, the housing cooperatives who are now being fostered by the municipality. What do you think about this? Is this also the best model to ensure that garden cities of tomorrow will be built? I don't know actually who I should ask this to.
I actually
Maybe.
think it's a big challenge, but it's not my.
Yeah, but tell me, what is the
expertise.
challenge?
But I think they the good thing about corporations is they have a vision for a longer term for their inhabitants. So also the quality of the buildings that are being delivered, the attention that goes to the total design, and also the embedding in the community is much more on the foreground than for some developers, because there's a big difference, in my opinion, between private equity and commercial. But
So you mean that actually they should do it? That they're the
no,
best
I think the
party to
combination
do
is
it.
great, but I
Yeah.
think they are a great party to do it.
Yeah.
But I think the solution is in working together.
Yeah, curious about what Anne-Jo thinks. So housing associations or housing cooperatives?
It's always good and nice if people really want to make it themselves, that they're doing it themselves. So in Amsterdam, we also have some corporations. That's really good. But most of the people who lives at the housing corporations, they don't want to get their own rent for their neighborhoods. What you said, they are really worried about how do I get enough money to reach the end of the month. So a lot of our people who live at our places, they don't have time, for living in a housing corporation. That's the reality. Yeah. So, but I know Rochdale is really, that's one of the companies here, the housing corporation. They really working together with corporations. So we will work together with them. And if people want, it's possible. But we also know that a lot of people, we have more than 400 people waiting for a social house in this city. And a lot of people just want a house. But they want a house where they can live in the green, where they can live with a community, that if your children is sick, that somebody can take care of it, let's say. That is what the people want. And I think most of the people like it to have a big company who is looking for that kind of subject.
Yeah. Okay. So your proposal for the future is focus on housing associations and ask them to team up with cooperatives. That's a kind of
team up with cooperatives,
Yeah.
or also another way of working together with the community. It's not the only way. The corporations, you can also just work together with them, make together a big green area in the middle where you can build your own vegetables. Let's say there are really
or like the Pulse, be part of a bigger block with offices and mid-level and high-level rent and social housing. Yeah.
Yeah, it can. There are all type of forms, and a corporation, I think that is a more difficult form, because most of the time you also you have to do a lot of your own.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Let's open for questions from the audience, and I know that Matthijs was already calling me. Like, I have a question, so I'm gonna move to him first. And actually, there's someone else who has a microphone, so I don't need to cross anymore. That's also nice. Let's start with Matthijs. Matthijs, your question, please.
Yeah, I'm Matthijs van Meij. I'm working for the city of The Hague, and we have a big challenge in The Hague Southwest. About 70,000 people live in the garden city The Hague Southwest, and we have a big challenge because we have to renovate a lot of social housing. So we will demolish about 5,000 houses, but add 10,000 houses. But at the same time, there's a lot of gardens. More than 300 community gardens are existing now, but most of them are bad maintenance, and some rats are there, garbage. There's not social connection. So we try at the same time renovate the houses, and at the other time also to think about how can we improve the quality of the green gardens between the houses, the community gardens, and how will we involve the people, participation, also the new groups, that the immigrants. And one of the things we think about is go back to the history. In the 50s and 60s years, we had garden committees that were committees existing of the neighbors which live in the houses, and they plan activities, social activities. But also, how can we combine the physical challenge to renovate the houses with the social impact of climate change, healthy questions, playgrounds for children. So a lot of questions, and we want to invest as a city, at the same time the social housing companies, to improve the quality of the gardens in the Hague Southwest. And at the same time we try to look at good examples. How can we involve people more in their own maintenance and own involvement?
Okay, so what is the question?
The question is, do you have good examples also where the neighborhoods take power and have more interest and more involvement of the maintenance of the community garden?
How to involve citizens?
Yeah, we have a good of examples here. For example, in New West Corporation Stadgenoot made good agreements and good appointments with the people living there. So I will tell you later about the special gardens which you can visit. And in Southeast we have people from the K neighborhood. They also working really together with the people of the neighborhood. They're also thinking, what do we have to build over there? So they want to have houses for young people. And we have one guy, it's called Mike Brandjes. He's one of the guys, he's really great. So you always need some people who are really, he knows everybody. And the nice thing is he knows his neighborhoods, but he also knows me. So that's the good thing. He knows who he has to arrange something with, and he knows how he can get the community one step further away. But I also have bad examples here, where we have the same problems as in The Hague, that we wanted to make a green space, but in fact there's only garbage over there.
Yeah. So involve Brandjes, I understand. That's the. And thanks for introducing this
Stadsmaker,
case, because it's super
say.
stadsmaker indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the word. Thanks for introducing this case, because it is a super challenging task. Thanks. Here's a question over
do you
here.
want me to respond as well?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and then we have the question of the man over there. Yeah.
Okay. I'm just going to give you two examples. One I can send you information on is a borough in South London who had an initiative, a borough-wide initiative, to identify community champions across the borough in different estates across the borough, to provide that physical presence and that person to connect, to find out, because it's all based on the people, isn't it? It's the personalities, people that have that enthusiasm and want to take it forward. So it's a really interesting plan to look at there. But just to offer a contrasting approach, I mentioned in my presentation Incredible Edible, which is a movement, which is an example of actually how municipalities can play a role, an enabling role, by actually getting out of the way and providing land or space or resources for communities to get on with doing these things themselves. And so Incredible Edible was a movement started where people just were fed up with the way their local area was looking. So they just started planting food on the side of the road, planting food in different parts of the village. And what happened is people started to ask questions about what this food growing was, and it built into this movement of all sorts of people that weren't necessarily taking any interest or actively participating in what was happening in the area. Food is a great leveler. Everyone has to eat, okay? No matter who you are, where you're from, everyone has to eat. And so it was a really good vehicle for that. So there are some councils in England that are also recognising that and are working in partnership with Incredible Edible Groups to say, okay, well, we'll let you use this scrap of land for growing food as long as we don't have to do anything with it. And the benefit for them is the place looks nicer, and you start to identify those people that can actually make change happen. So there's a role of actively trying to instigate change, but also there's a role for getting out of the way and enabling those bottom-up approaches as well.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Hi, thanks. I'm Stefan. I have a question because the community role in these developments for green, for community functions and the maintenance of those, it always seems to depend on these community champions like Mike Branches, but they're simply not always there. So what is missing, or what is blocking the development of these communities in all these nice developments? All these gardens that turn out to garbage, what is blocking these communities to evolve? And another question, if you're working as an architect on these problems, or on these new cities, these new blocks, do you have a role in designing the community?
Well, on the second question, we don't always have the role, but normally we try and take it, because architects always overstep their boundaries. So also in that sense, we do as well. Maybe another approach, also the question is about the gardens, is do people always want a garden? Because that's also why they're not maintained in some areas. So, for example, we're also doing a project in New West, which is 2 social housing blocks and a mid-segment block. And we sat together with the community and asked them what they wanted. And eventually, they wanted a basketball court and a boxing school, and they didn't want an interior garden. I said, and I was like, but green is nice. And of course, we have rules from the city. We have to have water retention. We have a certain amount of green. So what we did, we made the certain amount of green that they wanted. We placed in a boxing school in the middle of the square, and adjacent a community space, and everybody's super happy. So it's also in some sort, sometimes again, like, what do people want? What do people need who live in a certain neighborhood? And they said, yeah, we don't really want a lot of green because we live next to a park. We go to the park. Yeah. So sometimes also redirecting the question, and sometimes we can also not solve it. But
yeah.
I tried to give you an answer on the first question.
Great.
I hope I succeed in that. When I was working as sort of city architect for a developer, I had a discussion about them. What is the most beautiful way of, what do you like to have for a new area? And they were always expressing the public space, the quality of the public space, etc. But in all their renderings, there is an exception, because you see all the buildings, all bricks in the buildings, and you see an exception. This is a beautiful rendering, but we are not allowed to, we are not, we're not going over, we are not responsible, we're not responsible for the public space, because that is the city. So if we still have the diversion with what is the area of a developer or a corporation or the city, and it's all with diverse ownerships, that's really a big issue we have to deal. Because then everyone is pointing at the other part. And it's all about cooperation and work together. So the new cooperations where we are most by people, I think there has to be a new cooperation by the combination of the private, the public, the different kind of parties. And I think you have to have a new kid on the block. And maybe it's the ASML, or it is our parties that are really concerned about their employees, about how can we give them a home. So I think sometimes it's better to involve different kind of people who have new ideas, who are a little bit not so common, so they have new energy, new experiences, maybe something from abroad. Then you have to give some renewal in it.
Yeah. Thanks a lot for this answer.
I think that is one of the...
Great.
solutions.
Let's move to the next question, who is by this lady over here. Can you also introduce yourself? I will hold the mic.
Ah, okay.
Wait.
Hi, so this is Clara from Housing Europe. I think an issue that has been maybe perhaps a little bit overshadowed is mobility. So I was wondering, how do you influence sustainable travel behavior, sustainable mobility, especially intensifying neighborhoods, and especially with existing residents to reduce or minimize car ownership?
Nice question. Yeah. Yeah, that's fine. Existing neighborhoods. So then I'm looking to the left side of the panel. Is that right? Is it either Hilde or Anio who could answer this? Or
It depends. So
yeah.
what we currently are doing in New West as well, it's different kinds for different housing. So for social blocks, there's a lot of people don't even have a car, especially in the city. So in Amsterdam, most people do everything by bike or by metro. So the accessibility to urban transport is super important in any sense, but I think that's normal in a city. And then, for example, for the big new buildings we did, there are no car parking spaces, for example, in the Puls. No car parking spaces for the houses. It's only deel mobility, shared mobility concepts, which are also based on your income, which is quite interesting, I find. So if you can pay more, you pay more, which is also it is an experiment, but an interesting one, I think. And for the but maybe you can also elaborate on that for the existing communities. In Holland, the problem is a bit different probably than in the UK because a bit more car orientated.
Let's move to the left driving perspective.
Yeah. I wish we had the cycle infrastructure anywhere near that you have in the Netherlands, but yeah, absolutely. In England, it all comes down to making active travel and sustainable modes of transport the most convenient and the most affordable option. Okay, so if it's the easiest and the cheapest option, that's what people will do. But because you're often having to retrofit these ideas into new places, it's really difficult. But the way successful developments have managed that is getting that infrastructure in first. So you get your bus routes in, you get your cycle routes in, right from the very early residence of a new development, for example. And that relies on having a developer that has that long-term perspective and is willing to make that upfront investment for long-term gain. But having those options open from the very beginning can influence behaviour change right from the beginning. So it's the location of facilities. I mean, there's lots of interest in 20-minute neighbourhoods at the moment and 15-minute cities. We've been doing a bit of work on that. And for us, that's got its roots in the Garden City movement. The Garden Cities were designed so that they were walkable neighbourhoods. All of the local infrastructure was in walking distance of each other. So it's really about that infrastructure first approach. And about behaviour change. There's also some interesting innovations to do with technology that people are using to try and influence behaviour change. There's some developments in the UK where they're using apps and people get points if they walk somewhere instead of driving, and increased use of things like shared car clubs and lots of things which are much more common in the places that you guys live and work. But these ideas are slowly seeping into good practice in development in the UK. And there's been a huge, in the last, I think, probably 5, if not 10 years, a real emphasis on the importance of health generally and that reconnecting health and planning. And I think there's a real realisation of the role of transport in that, and I think it's sort of changing that's changing the conversation really in terms of health and well-being.
Thank you.
And how we design places.
Yeah, well, actually, either we give another answer or we go to the final question, but we need to wrap up in a
small
second.
addition, yeah.
Yeah.
With the city of Amsterdam, we make a development strategy for 2035, and then we looked at the place where's the public transport already. So that are the places where we're going to build a lot of houses, and that makes really big transformation in the habits of people. And the second thing we do is we densify in the existing neighborhoods, so there's already a good public transport. And what you told, in the Netherlands, a lot of people have bikes. And nowadays we have electric bikes with another problem with it. But the way that the new places we make, it's around public transport, and that's really common in the Netherlands. Maybe that's a difference from England, that we want to make places like the South Axis. Yeah, you don't need a car anymore because the public transport is very good over there.
Start with the right location in the first place.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks a lot for answering the questions. Excuse me for the person who had his hand raised and that I cannot give room to. I'm sorry, the answers were too long. I'm sorry. No, it's all right. They were very interesting. Okay.
Just one question.
No, wait. No, we don't do that because we need to move on. Because also somebody of the organization told me that let's remind you the bus is leaving in a second. So first I would like to thank you. Thank you, Anne-Jo, Katie, Hilde and Charlotte for your presentations and for the panel discussions. Great. And next I would like to thank the organizers. So everybody who was here of Museum Het Schip and Ketelhuis who have helped to organize this great event. So Museum Het Schip, thank you. You always have great ideas and great proposals and you make it even happen, which is fantastic. Then Municipality of Hilversum, Housing Europe, ADES. Great that you are involved in this event. Fantastic. Thank you. Let's give them a round of applause.